Hello, everyone. This is Anime Dreams, and welcome back to the channel. Today, we're diving into another exciting fanfic discussion. What if Naruto had magnet release? Disclaimer: the content on this channel is for entertainment and discussion purposes only. I do not own any of the anime footage used in my videos. All rights and credits go to their respective creators and copyright holders. Let's get into it. Namikaze Naruto was an exceptionally intelligent boy, one who, under different circumstances, would have been hailed as a prodigious genius among the future generation of Konoha's shinobi. Anyone who took the time to know him could have attested to this. However, the bright future that once lay before him had been extinguished by a single, cruel truth: he had been selected to bear the weight of the hatred directed toward the Jinchuriki twins. Worse still, this decision had been made by none other than his own father. Minato, the fourth Hokage, had justified his choice by claiming that it would ultimately benefit the village, that Naruto would come to understand the greater good in time. He insisted that Konoha would emerge stronger as a result. But all Naruto had experienced was the crushing reality of being despised as a demon. Unlike his sister, who carried the bulk of the Kyuubi's chakra and was celebrated as a hero, Naruto contained only its conscience, and for that, he was vilified. What stung most was the active encouragement of this treatment by his own father, with even his mother supporting the idea. Both believed that this arrangement would guarantee Mitsuko's rise to greatness, even if it meant relegating Naruto to a forgotten footnote in history. Yet, if Naruto possessed one defining trait, it was his unwavering determination. In this case, he was resolute in his decision to escape. One day, he vowed, the village would realize what they had lost by favoring his foolish sister over him. Night had fallen, and Naruto was hidden beneath a tarpaulin covering a shipment of goods bound for Suna, the village hidden in the sand. He had chosen this caravan not out of preference but because it offered the most convenient means of escape. As the caravan slowly began its journey and approached the village gates, Naruto's anxiety spiked. He knew this was the most perilous moment, where discovery was most likely. Suddenly, the canvas above him was lifted, and a boy with black hair, no older than 11, peered into the wagon. His eyes glowed crimson. Naruto recognized them instantly as the Sharingan, the renowned dojutsu of the Uchiha clan. His heart sank. It seemed his bid for freedom had ended before it could truly begin. The Uchiha's eyes bore into Naruto's very soul, and time stretched painfully, though it could not have been more than a few seconds. Then, without a word, the boy lowered the canvas back into place. Barely audible, Naruto caught his whispered words. "Good luck. May you find the freedom I never could." Naruto mulled over the Uchiha's cryptic words, the weight of the statement lingering with him for the next 6 days. Despite his efforts, no resolution came to the unsettling questions that had arisen, and those words would continue to reverberate in his mind for years to come. The consciousness that once embodied the formidable Nine Tails drifted restlessly within its sealed prison, pondering its uncertain future. It knew its former power would never return, and eventually, a new Kyuubi would emerge from the immense chakra residing within that blonde fool's daughter. Yet here it was, still bound to a host it found more tolerable than its previous ones, largely because this host wasn't constantly obsessing over ramen or endlessly watching that accursed treehugger. For a while, the Baijiu had reached a state of begrudging acceptance with its situation. But that tranquility was shattered when it realized its host was leaving the village. Another Baijiu was undoubtedly involved, and though its once mighty strength had waned, the Kyuubi's instinct for self-preservation remained intact. So, it waited patiently for its host to fall asleep, ready to strategize how to navigate the impending challenges. Minato Namikaze was widely regarded as an honorable man. Ask anyone in Konoha, and they would eagerly sing his praises. Of course, opinions from Iwa, or even from his own son, would differ, but one could never satisfy everyone. It was his son, in fact, that currently weighed on Minato's mind as he sat at his desk. The boy had yet to return from whatever mission he had set out on, though there had been no reports of any injuries or hospital visits. Minato was confident his son would eventually reappear. The issue of Naruto was a delicate one, but for Minato, the path forward had always been clear. His daughter, Mitsuko, was the child of prophecy, as Jiraiya-sensei had foretold. To ensure she reached her full potential, it was necessary that one of the children bear the burden of the Jinchuriki. The decision had been straightforward. Someday, when peace blanketed the world, civilians like Naruto would be grateful for the sacrifice his daughter had made. Minato had no intention of letting Naruto pursue a shinobi life that might overshadow Mitsuko's role. Regardless of what Kakashi or the Sandaime believed, such a risk to her future could not be tolerated. Resolute in his decision, Minato rose from his chair. He was certain that, in time, Naruto would come to understand and appreciate the wisdom behind his choices. After all, such matters always had a way of working out in the end, or so he believed. Naruto slowly succumbed to sleep, about 2 hours after the unsettling encounter with the Uchiha. Upon awakening, he found himself in an unfamiliar, dimly lit sewer. "Strange," he murmured, his voice echoing throughout the vast underground labyrinth. Without hesitation, he began to navigate the winding tunnels, assuming that clarity would come once he encountered someone, or something, that could explain his circumstances. When he reached the heart of the chamber, his breath caught as he saw a massive iron cage adorned with a peculiar seal. Upon closer inspection, he recognized it as the seal that had been used to split and bind the Kyuubi within him and his sister. "So, it was you who summoned me here?" he inquired, addressing the seemingly vacant room. "Perceptive, human. Indeed, you're the more astute of the two. From what I have observed, your sister struggles with even the simplest of thought processes." Naruto raised an eyebrow. "I assume you want something, Kyuubi?" "You assume correctly. I seek to know where we are headed. While Konoha is far from holding any fond memories for me, having spent over 60 years there, I am aware there are worse places to end up." Naruto responded calmly, "We're traveling to Suna, the village hidden in the sand. It's a small village, and they are in need of shinobi recruits. I thought I'd stand a better chance there than anywhere else." "Perhaps, but you will face suspicion as an outsider. Had you possessed one of those coveted Kekkei Genkai, they would have welcomed you without hesitation. Still, Suna is home to Shukaku, the weakest of the tailed beasts, yet powerful enough to be a serious threat," the Kyuubi mused, its crimson eyes narrowing in thought. After a moment of silence, the beast continued, "However, there may be a solution. When I was sealed within your mother, I learned of a man who wielded the power of magnetism through his bloodline, using it to control iron sand and suppress Shukaku whenever its host lost control. Your sister, too, will eventually lose control when the chakra inside her begins to gain sentience. I have no desire to meet my end in such a fashion, which is why I offer you a proposal. I will help you obtain this magnet release bloodline to ensure our survival, and I will guide you when needed, for I possess far more knowledge of the world than you. Do we have a deal?" Naruto studied the fox behind the bars of the cage. Even in its weakened state, it offered him a path to not only becoming a shinobi but ensuring his survival. It would be foolish not to accept such an offer. He turned to face the fox directly, his voice steady with resolve. "I accept." The Kyuubi's lips curled into a malicious grin, baring its sharp teeth as its eyes gleamed with an eerie red light. The remnants of its chakra began swirling ominously around its form. "Very well. It will take me several days to complete this, and by then, your journey will likely be over. I will contact you once I am finished." Naruto gave a curt nod and turned to leave, his figure slowly fading from the fox's sight. A low growl rumbled from the Kyuubi's throat. While the situation wasn't ideal, it was better than nothing. Perhaps a reunion with Shukaku wouldn't be so bad either, especially since the two hadn't crossed paths since the days of the Sage of Six Paths. The Yondaime Kazekage scowled as thoughts of his son, Gaara, filled his mind. His previous decisions had clearly not been in the village's best interest. Now, his 6-year-old son was ruthlessly eliminating anyone who so much as glanced at him wrong, whether shinobi or civilian. Regret gnawed at him, if only he could undo the choices he had made. Gaara's worth to the village had diminished significantly because of his actions. Another issue weighed heavily on him: none of his children had inherited the magnet release bloodline, one of the few valuable abilities Suna possessed. This, coupled with Gaara's increasing susceptibility to Shukaku's influence, only compounded the village's problems. With a heavy sigh, he gazed out into the unforgiving desert. Financial constraints were tightening around the village, and he found himself praying that something, anything, would come to reverse their declining fortunes. 5 days later, Naruto found himself aimlessly wandering through the streets of Sunagakure no Sato, uncertain about his next steps. His best option, he supposed, would be to seek an audience with the Kazekage, though he wasn't entirely sure how to approach such a matter, unless, of course, the bloodline the Kyuubi had spoken of decided to manifest. Something was undeniably changing. His body felt different, though the absence of flying kunai suggested the fox was still at work. Absent-mindedly, he kicked a small stone along the dusty path. He loathed idleness, as it left him vulnerable to the gnawing feeling of loneliness that always lurked in the background. Glancing around, he realized he had stumbled into an open field, reminiscent of those in Konoha from which he had often been chased away. A bitter chuckle escaped his lips. This time, he was allowed in the space, yet no one else was present. Or so he thought. Upon closer inspection, he noticed a boy, about his age, playing with a ball as streams of sand trailed behind him, seemingly alive. Intrigued, Naruto approached, curious if this boy shared the same solitude he had known all his life. Gaara observed the strange blond boy drawing closer. Oddly enough, the sand didn't react with hostility as it usually did when someone approached. Instead, it remained calm, and even the voice of his mother had quieted, as though awaiting something. Gaara decided to wait as well. When the boy was finally within reach, Gaara felt an overwhelming sense of recognition, as if he had always known the whiskered boy standing before him. For the first time, he felt no desire to harm someone near him. Breaking the silence, Gaara asked, "Do you want to play?" His voice wavered, and he braced himself for the inevitable rejection, expecting the boy to flee in terror, as everyone else did upon seeing his sand. Naruto, taken aback by the question, stared at the boy who, like him, bore facial markings, though of a different kind. No one had ever asked him to play before, they usually fled in fear, and his mother had always told him he wasn't allowed friends because his sister was destined to fulfill some ancient prophecy foretold by an old toad. Collecting himself, Naruto looked into the boy's eyes and was struck by a profound realization: he knows the pain of loneliness, just like me. "Sure, I'll play," Naruto responded, keeping his expression neutral, though inside, he was elated to have found someone who, for the first time, wanted to spend time with him. Gaara glanced at him, seemingly in disbelief. "You're not afraid of my sand? Everyone else is," he muttered, waiting for the inevitable retreat. "No," Naruto replied calmly, "why would I? It's pretty cool." Gaara, hearing this, was momentarily bewildered. No one had ever referred to his sand as cool. More often, they screamed in terror, branding him a demon. Choosing to let it go, Gaara kicked the ball back towards Naruto. Soon, the two 6-year-olds were engrossed in their game, passing the ball between them with growing enthusiasm, paying no attention to anything beyond the ball and the bond that was beginning to form. "Kazekage-sama, you won't believe this." The Kazekage frowned as he looked up to see Baki, one of his more competent jonin, entering the room in a rush. "What is it, Baki?" he asked, already bracing himself for bad news. Baki had been tasked with overseeing Gaara today, which rarely meant good tidings. "Gaara. He's made a friend." The Kazekage froze. His mind raced for a moment before he processed the words. "Pardon?" "Well, Kazekage-sama, Gaara was sitting in the northern field with a ball, and this blonde kid showed up. The sand didn't react aggressively, so we watched. They talked for a bit, and then they started playing with the ball. Just playing, like it was the most normal thing." The Kazekage stared at Baki, trying to collect his thoughts. After a long pause, he rose from his seat, draping his robes over his shoulders. "Come with me. I need to see this child for myself. He may hold the key to controlling Gaara." Internally, he pondered whether this could be the solution to at least one of his ongoing concerns. "Naruto, reluctant to admit it, was having the best time of his life, further solidifying his belief that leaving his village had been the smartest decision he had ever made. However, their game was abruptly interrupted by the arrival of a Suna shinobi, who hurled insults at Gaara, calling him a monster and a demon, and attempting to kill him by throwing kunai. Before Naruto could react, the sand surrounding Gaara swiftly formed a protective barrier. Refusing to let harm befall his new friend, Naruto instinctively reached out, willing the iron kunai to stop midair. It was at this precise moment that the Kazekage and Baki arrived on the scene. The Kazekage was taken aback, not so much by the Jonin's attempt to kill his son, he had come to expect that, but by the fact that Gaara appeared to have made a genuine friend. Even more startling was that this child seemed to possess a similar ability, a Kekkei Genkai akin to the Kazekage's own. Baki swiftly dealt with the misguided Jonin, who, in his view, had made a rather pitiful attempt at assassinating Gaara. Meanwhile, the Kazekage, with growing interest, escorted the two boys back to his office, all the while thinking that perhaps fate had finally answered his prayers by sending this extraordinary child. The Kyuubi settled into a state of calm. It had only recently completed the integration of its bloodline when an older Ningen launched an assault against its host, alongside the Shukaku brat. Although unfamiliar with the protective sand techniques employed, the Kyuubi surmised that Shukaku had likely developed new skills over the years. Recognizing the robes of the Kazekage, the Kyuubi anticipated that the man would take a keen interest in this encounter. With a twinge of apprehension, it began the final stage of melding its consciousness with that of its host, Naruto Namikaze. The prospect of impending events filled the beast with a sense of intrigue as it relinquished its independence. The Kazekage positioned the two boys in front of his desk, noting with some surprise that Gaara maintained his composure in the presence of this new acquaintance. He was determined to evaluate whether this child held any merit beyond his immediate connection. As he scrutinized his son's companion, he observed the distinctive whisker marks, blonde hair, and striking blue eyes that bore a remarkable resemblance to a man he had encountered just a year prior. A sense of foreboding washed over him as he realized the identity of Gaara's friend and the likely reason for their rapport. "Who are you?" he inquired, already anticipating the answer. "Naruto Namikaze." The Kazekage sighed, recognizing that this situation was too precarious to be mere coincidence. "What is the Hokage's son, and a Jinchuriki of Konoha at that, doing in my village?" "I ran away," Naruto replied. "I'm not the Jinchuriki in the traditional sense. My sister holds the true essence of the chakra." The Kazekage was taken aback. "What do you mean?" "My father," Naruto said, his voice laced with palpable disdain, "sealed the Kyuubi's consciousness along with a small portion of its chakra within me, while my sister was sealed with the majority. His intention was for me to endure the typical life of a Jinchuriki while allowing my sister to embody the hero. I refused to accept that fate, particularly when he prohibited me from becoming a shinobi, so I left and came here." The Kazekage nodded, recognizing the underlying logic of the boy's words. He recalled the whispers surrounding Naruto, even from his own parents. Despite the cruelty that characterized his father, he had never expressed hatred towards Gaara. "How did you evade the kunai earlier?" The Kazekage's curiosity was piqued. It would be concerning if the Namikaze family were gaining access to magnet release. Naruto's expression grew contemplative, as if he were conversing with someone unseen. He had mentioned the Kyuubi's consciousness within him. It was likely he was indeed communicating with the beast itself. "The Kyuubi and I have no desire to perish. Upon learning that I was heading to Suna, it decided I needed a means to counter the Shukaku. It bestowed upon me a Kekkei Genkai that had been utilized to control it during its previous host's breakdown. I hoped that, coupled with my newfound resistance to Genjutsu, I might gain acceptance into the village's shinobi program." The Kazekage studied Naruto carefully. It was evident that there was no fondness left for Konoha in his demeanor. Furthermore, he possessed an ability that could elevate him to a level comparable to the third Kazekage and himself. Partnering him with Gaara could ensure that his son would not harm those around him. Ultimately, Naruto presented solutions to many of the village's challenges, making it difficult to refuse him. "Very well, you will reside with Gaara and my other children." None of them possess the magnet-based abilities that you and I do, so you will be integrated into our family. Having blonde hair is not unusual, so I will claim you as a distant cousin. He added, this will also allow me to keep a close watch on you. He then observed the whisker marks. Are you willing to have them removed? Those? Naruto gestured to the marks on his cheeks. At the Kazekage's nod, he replied with a scoff, please, they connect me to my former family. I would gladly have them removed. The Kazekage nodded, pleased with the response. Excellent. Gaara, take him to our residence and inform everyone that Naruto will be joining our household. Also, send Baki in as you leave, we have matters to discuss. Gaara complied, and the two boys exited. Moments later, Baki entered and took a seat. What are your thoughts? The Kazekage inquired, knowing Baki understood the context. He could be immensely beneficial to the village, Baki replied. His presence ensures a magnet user in this generation, and partnering him with Gaara could help control the Shukaku. Additionally, the boy clearly possesses intelligence. If we provide him with a home and proper training, he may be grateful. Indeed, the Kazekage acknowledged. He harbors a deep-seated hatred for the Hokage, and he has disclosed crucial information about the identity of Konoha's Jinchuriki, which they have concealed for far too long. Moreover, Gaara appears to remain calm in his presence, which is essential for our ultimate weapon. Keeping Naruto close will allow us to manage situations in my absence. This could prove to be advantageous. He is a valuable addition to the village. Baki nodded in agreement. I want them both trained, and perhaps it is time for the iron sand to rise again from the desert. You would trust him with that? Baki gasped, astonished by the Kazekage's willingness to consider such a prospect. Not immediately, of course. However, if his loyalty to the village is proven, there is no reason to withhold my father's techniques from him. There is no benefit in keeping such power locked away when he has the potential to surpass me in wielding the Kekkei Genkai. Yes, I believe this is for the best. Ensure that their training begins. Tamari should commence her lessons as well, and Kankuro can start learning puppetry, as he has expressed interest. The next generation must be strong enough to ensure the village's survival, and I believe these four will lead us into a promising future. Baki nodded and excused himself, allowing the Kazekage a moment to gaze out over the village, contemplating a time when its future would be secure under capable leadership. Meanwhile in Konohagakure no Sato. As Naruto, formerly known as Namikaze, negotiated his position within Sunagakure, his father, Minato, was left wondering about the whereabouts of his wayward son. The general apathy of the villagers towards his disappearance indicated that no substantial efforts were made to locate him. Consequently, Minato was led to the somber conclusion that Naruto might have perished in some forsaken place, which he lamented as no great loss. Conversely, Kushina found a sense of relief in this situation, allowing her to devote her attention entirely to their daughter without the burden of guilt. Tragically, only 3 individuals in the entire village mourned Naruto's absence: the 11-year-old Uchiha Itachi, who saw in Naruto a reflection of himself and grieved the loss of a prodigious talent to another village, Kakashi Hatake, who had perceived the boy's intelligence and potential as a promising shinobi, and the third Hokage, who had never endorsed his predecessor's decisions concerning Naruto. Though saddened, they had to accept that the boy had no reason to return to Konoha, a village that had strayed far from the ideals cherished by the third's mentors and was likely happier wherever he was. 6 years later, 5 figures approached the grand gates of Konoha, drawing the attention of the Chunin on duty, who attempted to discern their identities. The first figure donned what resembled a feline costume, adorned with face paint or makeup, and carried something wrapped in bandages on his back. This stood in stark contrast to the girl accompanying him, whose hair was styled into 4 pigtails, complemented by a large fan strapped to her back. The group was rounded out by 3 more individuals: a man with half of his face veiled, quickly recognized as Baki, the Jonin commander of Sunagakure, and 2 boys, one with striking red hair, carrying a large gourd on his back, emblazoned with the kanji for love, while the other was clad in an expansive gray robe. This second boy had a thick, fur-lined collar, and his shoulder-length, Spiky blonde hair was held back by a Sunagakure forehead protector, his cold blue eyes betraying a bored expression as he surveyed the village ahead. Baki approached the guards and presented their identification papers. Jonin Baki, with teams 1 and 2 from Sunagakure, here for the Chunin exams in 1 week, he stated. The guards examined the documents, found nothing amiss, and signaled for them to proceed. Your accommodations are approximately 500 meters ahead, one of the guards added. Thank you, the blonde replied as he walked past, with the others following closely behind him and the red-haired boy. Odd sort, don't you think? One of the guards remarked to his companion. They reside in the desert, their minds must be somewhat altered. Did you see the individual in the cat suit? Quite perplexing. One of them resembled Hokage-sama. Nah, merely a coincidence. There are several blondes in Sunagakure, it's just a happenstance. Yes, why would the Hokage's child be a Sunagakure ninja? What a ludicrous thought. And so, Naruto Namikaze returned to his birthplace, unnoticed by those around him. As the group navigated the bustling streets, Naruto whispered something that only Gaara and Temari could hear. Hello, Konoha. Did you miss me? It was official, Kakashi found his team exceedingly frustrating. More than once, he wished Naruto had remained in the village, where he could have taken the boy as his apprentice, avoiding the challenges posed by the students he had been assigned. Sasuke Uchiha sat in brooding silence, undoubtedly plotting revenge against Itachi, an opponent so far beyond his abilities that Kakashi could hardly envision a scenario in which Sasuke would emerge unscathed, unless he managed to encounter Itachi while he slept. Sakura Haruno was a devoted admirer, with limited capabilities, whose primary motivation seemed to be winning over a clearly uninterested Sasuke. And then there was Mitsuko Namikaze, the true Jinchuriki of the village, and the least successful graduate of her class at the academy. This amused the masked Jonin to no end. It wasn't that she lacked talent, she simply seemed convinced that the Kyuubi's chakra would save her, despite 6 years of unsuccessful attempts to harness it. Moreover, being the daughter of the Yellow Flash led her to believe that no one would dare challenge her, despite Haku Yuki decisively defeating her in their last mission. None of them had learned from their previous experience, prompting Kakashi to enter them in the Chunin exams. This decision was strongly supported by the Hokage, albeit for differing reasons, namely, to present Mitsuko as a potential leader of the Leaf Village. The truth was that the girl lacked focus, was overly confident in her abilities, and had a significant gap in her understanding of essential shinobi skills. Nevertheless, the Chunin exams would reveal the challenges they faced. As reluctant as he was to admit it, he hoped that Guy's team would demonstrate the level of effort required. After distributing the necessary forms, he took his leave. He preferred to spend as little time as possible with the students. Ironically, Sasuke was the most competent among them, and Kakashi would have rather endured Guy's training challenges than extend his time with Sasuke. As he departed, he overheard Konohamaru, the Sandaime's grandson, insult Mitsuko. The boy harbored a clear disdain for the Hokage's daughter and made no effort to conceal it. Mitsuko turned to chase after him, while Sakura followed Sasuke, who had followed Mitsuko. Kakashi sighed and decided to speak with Obito, at least he found his company pleasant. After depositing their belongings, the Sand siblings and Naruto set out to complete various tasks before the exams commenced. As they strolled, Naruto and Gaara went to purchase kunai, which Naruto intended to grind into sand. They soon found themselves at an intersection when a small child with an excessively long scarf collided with Naruto. Frowning, he scooped the boy up just as a blonde girl appeared, whisker marks adorning her face. Naruto's frown deepened upon recognizing his former sister, while Temari, who had emerged with Kankura from their previous location, stifled a gasp. "Excuse me," her voice grated unpleasantly, grating against his ears. "I demand that you hand over the child, he needs to be punished for disrespecting the Hokage's daughter." "Are you suggesting that you would physically assault an 8-year-old? Naruto managed to reply with forced politeness, though internally he was seething. Meanwhile, the Kyuubi hoped fervently that his ancient chakra would not recognize his presence, a fear that thankfully went unfulfilled. "He insulted me, he deserves to be reprimanded," she reiterated, clearly unaccustomed to having her wishes denied. Temari and Kankuro stared at her in disbelief, while a new girl with pink hair entered the scene, inquiring about someone named Sasuke-kun. The child in Naruto's arms began shouting at Mitsuko, but eventually, the commotion subsided, and the presence of Suna headbands drew a fresh wave of questions. It was then that Sasuke-kun appeared, revealed to be the last Uchiha, which, in essence, translated to another spoiled brat. Realizing that her demands would not be met, Mitsuko turned and walked away, prompting Naruto to lose interest, longing only to retreat to his room. Gaara made one of his characteristic unsettling remarks, startling both Sasuke and his admirer before they too departed. Once the street quieted, Naruto addressed the child. "Come on, we'll escort you home." The boy, introduced as Konohamaru, nodded and led them toward his grandfather's residence, which they learned belonged to the Sandaime Hokage. Naruto felt a slight smile tug at his lips, pleased to assist the grandson of one of the few individuals who had treated him with kindness during his time in Konoha. "So, are all your Genin like that?" Temari inquired as they navigated the village. "Nah, most are quite decent. That particular team is referred to as the Brat Team by some of the other Jonin. Everyone sympathizes with Kakashi for being their sensei," Naruto replied, snorting at the thought, while Kankuro erupted in laughter. They arrived at the Sarutobi compound and, bidding farewell to the boy, made their way back to the hotel. Gaara voiced a sentiment shared by all when he remarked, "The Leaf Genin offer little to affirm my existence." Naruto nodded in agreement, pondering what the academy was teaching that allowed individuals like those he had just encountered to flourish. Naruto had returned to Konoha, and it was evident that he had made significant strides in his development since his departure, particularly in comparison to his peers who had remained in the village and endured the lackluster training at the academy that had produced the underwhelming Sakura Haruno. He noted Temari's expression upon seeing the girl and sensed that she was in for a challenging realization when the exams commenced. The morning air was brisk and invigorating against his skin as Naruto stepped out of the hotel where they were staying, Temari beside him. He surveyed his surroundings. Konoha resembled his memories, though some alterations were apparent. He could still identify the spots where he had sought refuge as a child. As he set off, Temari kept pace with him. He observed the citizens from the corner of his eye, wondering if anyone would recognize him. However, he doubted it. Having shed the moniker of the Whisker Demon, he believed he had become relatively unremarkable. "Does it feel strange to be back here?" Temari inquired, her pleasant voice breaking through his thoughts. He turned to her and smiled, a grin she mirrored, which widened his own, revealing his fang-like teeth. He appreciated Temari, as he did all three of his friends. The citizens of Sunagakure often avoided the Kazekage's children, and although he was considered one of them, not by blood, but by association, the four of them had each other as their closest companions. Yet, Naruto found it odd that in Sunagakure, he had forged friendships and garnered respect for his opinions. It was a bitter realization that had he remained in Konoha, he would have been deprived of such experiences. "I was contemplating the changes and constants," he replied. Temari's smile dimmed slightly. Among them, she possessed the most insight into his experiences in Konoha. Kankuro and Gaara were not particularly adept at discussing such matters. While Temari was not an ideal confidant, he felt she deserved to know. "You don't regret leaving," she stated, her voice tinged with curiosity and an undertone of apprehension. He pondered the source of her nervousness. Temari, known for her bluntness and strength, was not one to exhibit uncertainty. "Of course not. I met all of you, didn't I? And given what we witnessed yesterday, do you think I would regret it even for a moment?" Naruto's smile broadened. Leaving Konoha had been worthwhile, not only for the companionship of Temari but also because the Kazekage, despite his harsh demeanor, treated him far better than his biological parents ever had. The fact that he had forged friendships was the proverbial icing on the cake. Sunagakure was a harsh environment, and its residents were forthright about it, yet for Naruto, it was the most suitable place to be. His tumultuous history made Sunagakure more appealing than any other village, as he could genuinely appreciate the realities of their world. As they entered the commercial district, He searched for a weapons store and quickly spotted one, with Tamari trailing behind him. He felt a twinge of unease around Tamari, a sensation that had lingered for some time, though he was uncertain how to address it. Gaara would likely be incensed if he attempted anything inappropriate, despite their brotherly bond. He surmised that his feelings stemmed from their solitary time together. Although Gaara might be nearby, he hadn't been present when they awoke. Naruto suspected he was off seeking interesting individuals, at least he no longer resorted to violence. Since Naruto's arrival, the death rate in Sunagakure had decreased significantly, and it was a strange yet gratifying experience to have people approach him in gratitude. As they approached the door, he felt an inexplicable urge to grasp Tamari's hand, but he quickly dismissed the thought. She would prefer to maintain her image as a serious kunoichi in front of anyone they encountered. Reflecting on it further, he found it unsettling that this trip might be the most intimate moment they shared during the preliminary exams. Resolving to ponder this later, he opened the door and proceeded toward the kunai display, estimating that 500 would suffice to replenish his stock. In contrast to Naruto's assumptions, Gaara was not on the lookout for intriguing new acquaintances. Instead, he observed two of the three individuals he found most captivating. Perched atop a shop across from where Naruto and Tamari had entered, the sand user stifled a smile at their presence. He felt a sense of satisfaction seeing his brother in all but blood and his sister forming a bond. They complemented each other well, and he had confidence in their ability to protect one another. Moreover, there were few others in the village strong enough to challenge them. Each of them possessed sufficient power to have been promoted long ago, yet the impending invasion loomed over them. Gaara's disdain for this situation stemmed from a desire not to be utilized as a mere weapon. He recognized that Naruto harbored even greater reservations than either Tamari or himself. However, he had yet to inquire about Kankuro's perspective, leaving him uncertain of his brother's thoughts. Gaara understood Naruto's loyalty to Suna, rooted in concerns about disturbing the fragile balance and the tenuous peace, or rather, stalemate, between the villages. Such matters held little significance for Gaara. His loyalty lay with his family and his village, despite his complicated feelings toward his father. Standing up, he decided to return to their hotel. He had not encountered anyone he deemed a true challenge in the upcoming exams. Had they been allowed to reach their full potential, he suspected that the real competition would be between himself and Naruto. After all, Naruto was the only one capable of countering his sand effectively, and he was astute enough to secure victories in his own battles. Spotting Naruto and Tamari exiting, Gaara used the Shunshine technique to return to their room, preferring not to be caught spying on Tamari and the young man she had chosen. He contemplated whether Naruto was aware of this and, if not, whether he should inform him. Ultimately, he decided it would be more amusing to keep it to himself. Although Gaara lacked a strong sense of humor, as Kankuro often remarked, it was entertaining to tease those two about each other. Emerging from the shop, Naruto held a bundle of kunai secured with rope, hovering just above his hands. He moved forward with an unmistakable determination. The commercial district stirred feelings of animosity within him, a reminder of his painful childhood experiences there, as if a geyser of resentment was welling up inside. Tamari walked alongside him, concern etched on her face, but he chose to ignore her. His only desire was to escape the area. He felt as though he were suffocating in a confined space. As he advanced, he overlooked a certain one-eyed jonin from the leaf, distinguished by his gravity-defying silver hair and the small dog perched atop his head. Lost in the pages of his beloved orange book, he was oblivious to Naruto's presence. Naruto passed two blonde Sunanin, studying them as they strode past. They were clearly talented. The male wore robes not seen outside the village since the disappearance of the Sandaime Kazekage prior to the Third Great Ninja War. Frowning, he contemplated the implications of their attire, knowing the primary function of those with the Sandaime's skills concerning Suna's military operations. He speculated whether Mitsuko would be the only Jinchuriki participating in the forthcoming exams. The bond between the two Sunanin was evident, despite their reluctance to display it openly. He noticed the girl seemed to want to draw nearer to the boy but was restraining herself. Not a typical fangirl, he thought, as he observed the steely determination in their gazes, characteristic of most Sunanin, a reflection of their harsh environment. The village itself was a harsh place, the descendants of desert tribesmen who had founded it. He recalled a battle near the village during the war when civilians had emerged to slaughter a company of attacking Nin from Tikigakur. Nevertheless, despite its size as the smallest of the Great Five, Suna was also the most open to accepting foreign recruits. He often wondered if that was where Naruto had found refuge. He could not imagine any other place. Iwo would hardly welcome the child of the fourth, and Kumo was primarily interested in bloodlines, having sufficient recruits from their own ranks. As he heard Pakun yip in surprise, he made a mental note to inquire about it later upon returning to his apartment. He had anticipated that the younger generation would come seeking training, but their absence suggested he might enjoy a peaceful day immersed in his reading of Icha Icha. Naruto glanced back and made eye contact with Pakun. He had not initially noticed Kakashi's proximity, but he recognized that Kakashi's primary summon would be among the few who could identify him. He felt little concern over the matter. Once the exams commenced, his identity would become evident. Given the circumstances surrounding his departure, he doubted that Kakashi would disclose his whereabouts to the Namikaze/Uzumaki clan, or whatever his birth family chose to call themselves. "I'll need to catch up with someone later," he murmured to Temari. The cacophony of the crowd, bustling from shop to shop, drowned out his voice, leaving only his adoptive sister able to hear him. "Who? Will it interfere with that man's plans?" she inquired, the disdain in her tone palpable as she spoke the last part. No one harbored any fondness for Orochimaru's schemes, and Naruto could not shake the feeling that they were overlooking something significant regarding the man, or snake, as he now regarded him. "It shouldn't. I know better than to divulge anything. It's simply someone who was kind to me years ago. I am concerned about the potential repercussions, though. There's a real possibility we might ignite the Fourth World War over an old man's vendetta and your father's misguided attempt to resolve the mission crisis, all to compensate for the fact that Gaara is an ineffective weapon." "Kazekage-sama," she corrected him, though she did not contest the latter remark. The truth about her father was well known even in Suna. "Do you genuinely believe he would initiate a war over this?" she asked, now more anxious than before. She was aware of Naruto and Gaara's apprehensions, as well as her own and Kankuro's. The prospect of war unnerved her. Suna was the smallest of the Great Five, and with Konoha in ruins, they would have no allies to rely on, a dire situation indeed. He is a bitter old man whose life lessons were imparted by giant snakes, and Kazekage-sama is being manipulated. The snake harbors no loyalty to Suna, and that is what troubles me most. Should his plans fail, we will bear the consequences, not him. Their whispered conversation guided them to the hotel, where they hurried inside, eager to avoid lingering outside while onlookers stared at Naruto, who appeared to wield an arsenal of kunai in one hand. "Let's keep this discreet. If we discover any evidence of the snake's betrayal, we'll inform someone. Until then, it's best we remain vigilant," he concluded as they ascended the stairs, Temari's fan scraping against the narrow walls. She nodded in agreement, realizing the potential severity of their situation. What initially seemed a desperate plan concocted by a frantic man now appeared a grave error. Upon entering the room shared with the other boys, Naruto noted that their sensei was absent. He surveyed the space. The curtains remained drawn, but Kankuro was awake, seated in a corner and diligently working on his puppet, as was his custom. Gaara had returned, fixating on the wall, his sand swirling around him. Naruto assumed boredom had set in, as Gaara's collection of cacti was back in Suna, and he lacked an outlet for combat. Temari settled on the mattress, glancing at her siblings with a sigh. They had arrived a week early, but with little to occupy their time. Wandering the village was out of the question, and preparations had grown tedious. "Who are you meeting later?" she inquired, sensing it was the right moment to ask. Naruto paused before responding. He sat down and removed one of the scrolls strapped to his back, placing it on the ground and unveiling its contents. "Kakashi of the Sharingan," he replied as the iron powder revealed began to swirl around his form, lifting the kunai into the air. The others halted their activities, their attention focused sharply on him. "How did he find out you were back?" Kankuro asked, his gaze intent on his friend. His summon recognized me, Naruto answered, his tone revealing a remarkable level of indifference, even as the sand enveloped the first 10 kunai. Temari watched with a strange fascination as the sand flowed over the weapons, eroding them until only their rings remained. There was a peculiar beauty in the destruction, a dance of nature as the rings floated to eye level before the sand reformed, turning them into small spheres, which then tumbled to the ground, creating a slightly larger pile than before. Will he pose a problem? Kankuro queried, uncertain of their ability to contend with someone of Kakashi's caliber. If he disrupted Tsuna's plans, they would need to address the issue. Unlikely. He always had a soft spot for me, and he is not nearly as close to the Hokage as he once was. I doubt their relationship has improved, and I want to ascertain who we will be competing against. It will be worth it for that knowledge. Throughout this exchange, Naruto's black sand continued its work, the kunai levitating as the sand advanced, consuming and replicating itself in a mesmerizing cycle. So that's why you're going? Temari asked, still hesitant about the decision. Enough. Naruto may go if he wishes. I want to learn more about our competitors, Gaara interjected, his gaze shifting between Temari and Naruto, who remained unfazed under the weight of Gaara's intense scrutiny. I'll ensure it remains private, Naruto assured them. He already knew where he intended to go, the same place he had often sought refuge during his childhood, when he discovered that the main village was far from a safe haven. Temari and Kankuro exchanged hesitant glances, their trust resting firmly in Naruto, but lingering doubt surrounded Kakashi. Gaara remained as stoic as ever. Despite having emerged from the darkness that enveloped him following their uncle's attempt on his life, remnants of that turmoil occasionally surfaced, and no one wished to encounter its full force. Naruto sensed no need to elaborate. The matter was settled. Thus, the remainder of the day unfolded quietly. Naruto focused on replenishing his chakra reserves, Kankuro engaged with his puppets, Temari immersed herself in a book, and Gaara occupied himself by sculpting intricate sand constructs to engage in mock battles, interspersed with moments of contemplative silence as he stared at the wall. As Kakashi inquired, Pakun, could you share what was so surprising at the market? His curiosity piqued, he anticipated an interesting revelation. He's back. Kakashi paused, his reading halted, there was no need for further identification. Where? He asked, his excitement evident. He's the one we passed wearing the robes. Really? I wonder what tale accompanies his right to wear those. Most likely a compelling one. When do you plan to approach him? Who says I intend to? You implied at the moment you discovered that the one Namikaze you still wish to socialize with is in town. So, where can I find him? Wait until tonight. He's aware that we will seek him out, give him time to select a suitable location. You're joining me, then? Of course. What sort of question is that? Kakashi refrained from responding, his thoughts consumed by the changes that had transpired over the past 6 years in the life of his former teacher's son, the child he had wished he could have mentored. As night enveloped the vibrant town of Konoha, bustling with the added excitement of the Chunin exams, Naruto quietly exited the hotel room and ventured into the darkness. Do you think he will be all right? Temari asked, her gaze following the figure of her crush as it faded into the shadows. Yes, Gaara replied, elaborating, if necessary, he can unleash his other. Temari nodded, she had witnessed Naruto's other in action before, and it far surpassed Gaara in his possessed state by Shukaku. I suppose you're right, she conceded before leaving the room. She understood that she need not linger until Naruto's return, he would share his experiences with her in the morning. She really ought to confess her feelings to him, Kankuro remarked, observing his sister's departure. Gaara made no reply, finding little interest in his sister's romantic endeavors, aside from the amusement they provided. He was content in the knowledge that both Naruto and Temari would soon abandon their mutual hesitations and acknowledge their desire for a relationship. As Naruto navigated the village with stealth, the air was considerably cooler than it had been during the day, a peculiar sensation after years spent in the desert. He had grown accustomed to the intense, dry heat of the land of wind, far more than to the humid climate of his birthplace. Nevertheless, despite the passage of time, he recalled the path leading to the one place where he had once felt at ease. After nearly 10 minutes of climbing, he reached the summit of the Hokage monument, where, in keeping with his ritual, he kicked the back of the carving of his father. His enhanced strength yielded results. A small fragment broke free and tumbled away. In the recesses of his mind, he heard his other, once the Kyuubi no Yoko, chuckle softly. A slight smile graced Naruto's lips. He considered the Kyuubi a formidable ally, and even ventured to regard them as friends. He approached the likeness of his father, acutely aware of the Kazekage's superiority, a truth his adoptive sibling struggled to grasp. Seating himself atop the third Hokage's head, he awaited the arrival of the individual he anticipated. Unbidden, his iron sand rose into the air, swirling around him, an invisible yet reassuring presence in the night. Though the Kyuubi had relinquished some control over the magnetic forces it had bestowed upon Naruto, it remained far less potent than what Shukaku had granted Gaara. Nevertheless, it provided enough of a distraction to enable Naruto to respond should the need arise. He liked to believe this was a testament to the Kyuubi's concern for his well-being, though he suspected it was also the Kyuubi's means of maintaining a semblance of independence from the human to whom it had bound itself so closely. As he gazed at the flickering lights of the village, he marveled at the haunting beauty of the scene, a sight he had sorely missed during his time in Suna. Though it paled in comparison to what he had gained, it was still a pleasure to behold once more. Naruto sensed rather than saw Kakashi settle beside him, the gentle brush of a wet nose against his hand signaling Pakun's arrival. Absently, he scratched the area behind the miniature pug's ears, both of them gazing over the village in silence for a while. Kakashi, however, was the first to disrupt the comfortable stillness that had enveloped them. "You've removed the birthmarks," he remarked after a moment. Naruto paused in his scratching, then resumed at a more measured pace. Kazekage-sama believed it was best to eliminate my ties to the Namikaze lineage. It was quite symbolic, he explained, still avoiding Kakashi's gaze as his feet dangled above the ground. "You know the Kazekage?" Kakashi inquired, curiosity piqued about Naruto's experiences in Sunagakure. "I'm his adopted son," Naruto replied, a faint smile gracing his lips, though it went unnoticed in the darkness. "Oh, how did that come to be?" Kakashi asked, his expression blank as he grappled with the idea of the Kazekage raising the outcast child of the Hokage. "People were terrified that I was under the influence of the Kyuubi, even Kushina, who should have known better," Naruto said with a dark tone. "But ultimately, it provided me with more than either Minato or she were ever willing to offer." As he concluded, he allowed the iron sand to drift toward Kakashi, meandering over him before flowing back. "Ah, he took you in because of that?" Kakashi asked, surprised that the fox had seemingly endowed Naruto with a powerful bloodline. "A few other reasons, too. I think there was a certain satisfaction in raising the son of a man he didn't particularly like," Naruto replied absently, prompting Kakashi to mentally note that insight for future reflection. "I hear you've become a Jonin sensei," Naruto stated, framing it as a question. "As much as I detest it, yes, that's true. I suppose I can partially blame you for that," Kakashi said, waiting for Naruto's response. He appreciated the boy's calmer demeanor compared to others in his family, even his father. Their interactions had dwindled to matters concerning their roles in the village's military operations. "Why's that?" Naruto inquired, his voice laced with amusement, even without seeing Kakashi's expression. "You could have been my apprentice, you know." Naruto fell silent for a moment, the only sounds accompanying them were the crickets and his hands gently brushing Pakun's soft fur. "I doubt Minato would have permitted that. Given what I learned about the seal he used on me, I doubt I would have been welcomed in Konoha. What he did would have condemned me had I remained a civilian here," he said somberly. Despite his efforts to conceal it, the pain of his parents' sacrifice lingered, hurtful despite the resentment he harbored. Kakashi found himself at a loss for words. The unfortunate reality was that Naruto's apprehensions might have held some truth, despite his objections. He wondered about the implications of what Naruto meant when he referred to Minato's actions as a condemnation but decided to set that inquiry aside for now, knowing he would learn more in due time. What can you tell me about the Uchiha and Mitsuko? Naruto finally asked, breaking the extended silence that had become increasingly uncomfortable. You don't refer to her as your sister? Kakashi responded, noticing Naruto's amusement at his evasive answer. The Namikazes are no family of mine. Kakashi was taken aback by this declaration. He pondered how the Namikaze family would react to the realization that their son had consciously severed ties with both his family and the Uzumaki clan. Such a decision bore significant weight, and he couldn't help but wonder if they would feel hurt, despite the underlying animosity that had long existed between them. Your sister struggles. It seems she got a whole heap of problems from the Kyuubi's chakra, and apart from a healing factor, no benefits aside from huge reserves that she's made no attempt to control. She relies on you. And her father believes he can come to her rescue when she needs it. Sasuke possesses his Sharingan, and although he may not be as formidable as Itachi, it would be prudent not to underestimate him. Naruto nodded, recognizing that he wouldn't extract any further insights from the man. Despite his frustrations with the Hokage, he remained loyal to the village. Naruto had to admit he was impressed by Kakashi's unwavering dedication. It's unfortunate that circumstances unfolded this way. I believe Sensei made an error all those years ago. Kakashi rose, followed by Pakun. I'll see you around, Naruto. Best of luck in the exams. Naruto nodded, momentarily forgetting that Kakashi could not see in the dark, and remained seated. He gazed blankly into the night, reflecting on what could have been. After several hours, he finally stood and began his journey back to his room. Ultimately, things had worked out for the best. There was no benefit in regretting his departure. He had left Konoha and discovered happiness. Despite Kakashi's reassurances, the village held nothing for him, neither then nor now. In fact, the more he pondered, the more he felt that, had he been in Itachi's position, he might have committed a similar atrocity against his family before fleeing. His last thoughts before sleep enveloped him were whether the words Itachi had spoken to him that long ago night had foreshadowed the tragic actions of the Uchiha prodigy 2 years later. Had the massacre been Itachi's form of liberation? 30. I still fail to comprehend why you choose to wear that. It must be the most unappealing attire I've ever seen, Temari remarked to Naruto as they walked toward the venue for the first stage of the Chunin exams. Naruto grinned. Temari had never approved of his robes. Personally, he felt indifferent toward them, but he kept them as a memento since they were a gift. Why does Kankuro wear that cat suit? He retorted, prompting spluttering from Kankuro, who turned to face him, his freshly applied face paint glinting in the early morning sun. It is not a cat suit. It is a traditional battle costume of the Suna Puppeteer Corps. Just as traditional as those robes you are wearing. Kankuro shot back. I still don't understand why you wear them, Naruto. Kankuro's choice is one thing, he's a bit of a loser regardless, but those robes are older than the Kazekage. Temari exclaimed, disregarding Kankuro's now flushed face. Absently, Naruto noted the difficulty in distinguishing where the paint ended and his skin began. He also realized that Temari hadn't referred to the Kazekage as father. None of them had done so in quite some time, he reflected. They were a gift. They came with the Jitten scrolls that Kazekage-sama entrusted to me. Naruto exclaimed, feeling uncomfortable under scrutiny. While Temari could have likely procured better attire for him, he appreciated the acknowledgement from the Kazekage that he was worthy of such a gift. Enough, Temari. What he wears is Naruto's prerogative, Gaara stated in his usual monotone, not even glancing at the two blonde Suna ninjas. Naruto smiled. Gaara understood the value of a gift, as their lives had been strikingly similar until their paths crossed 6 years ago. Gifts were rare, and one learned to cherish them because their availability was uncertain. He knew Gaara shared this sentiment, even if he had never expressed it explicitly. They continued onward and soon reached the waiting room, only to find it was on the second floor instead of the third. Naruto didn't even need the Kyuubi's insight, though it no longer identified itself as the Kyuubi, since they were still in the process of naming the former Baijuu, to realize it was merely a genjutsu. Silently, the four of them proceeded. Few, if any, People were present apart from two disguised Chunin attempting to intimidate as many Genin as possible. The effort had little effect on the Suna ninjas, who were far from ordinary Genin. Upon entering the room, they noted the numerous individuals already gathered, including the spy Kabuto Yakashi. Naruto bared his teeth at the boy, harboring disdain for Orochimaru and his followers. Should they betray him, he would not hesitate to eliminate them. Naruto was taken aback by the palpable killing intent directed at the four of them. While it paled in comparison to Gaara's when fully unleashed, it was still a surprising reaction to their presence. He contemplated unleashing his own killing intent, but the decision was made for him as he felt the oppressive aura of insanity and bloodlust emanating from Gaara. He smiled when everyone abruptly returned to their prior activities, ignoring their presence. He watched the door for a bit, ignoring Temari as she tried to wind Kankuro up. He watched as more Konoha nins came in. Strangely enough, they seemed to be remarkably uninterested in observing their opponents and instead played catch-up. Naruto speculated that the newcomers were rookies, though he was taken aback by their presence in the Chunin exams. He had anticipated that Kakashi would have enrolled them in an effort to shift their mindsets and broaden their perspectives. Therefore, he was not surprised by their entry. This time, Naruto engaged his killing intent, allowing it to intertwine with the unique Baiju'u essence derived from the residual Kyuubi chakra within him. The palpable anger and bloodlust he exuded caused several individuals to shudder, a fact he noted with satisfaction. What are they doing allowing these inexperienced Genin in here? He heard Kankuro mutter. Naruto chose to disregard the comment. He suspected that Kankuro's disdain for those younger than him stemmed from nearly 2 years of living with an unstable Gaara, followed by the subsequent 3 years after Naruto's arrival when Gaara was still recovering from his previous turmoil. Both events had left indelible marks on everyone involved, but Kankuro's struggles were particularly evident. He observed as Kabuto conversed with the rookies, grinning when he noticed them glance in his direction, undoubtedly inquiring about him or his teammates. The two teams they formed, himself and Gaara as Team 1, and Temari and Kankuro as Team 2, boasted impressive mission statistics, especially considering that Gaara had remained unscathed throughout their encounters. He turned away, feeling a sense of ennui as the sound team entered. He surmised they were mere sycophants of Orochimaru. Suddenly, he sensed an overwhelming killing intent emanating from a clearly seasoned individual. He flared his own aura in response and turned to confront the man who had just arrived. Observing the battle-hardened Konoha ninja, it became evident that the Chunin exams were about to commence, marking Naruto's much-anticipated return to Konoha. A savage grin spread across his face, his fox-like teeth gleaming. He was eager to embrace the challenges ahead. My dear YouTube subscribers, that concludes our update for now. I will be back soon. Thank you for your continued support. Gratefully, Anime Dreams.